prayer now, right before the public hearing. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty. Thank you very much. The first item on our agenda tonight is to open a public hearing on the Hearn Road rezoning. And so we'll open the public hearing at 6:04 p.m. And this gives everyone who would like to a chance to address the board. We also have some written comments from people who we assume will not be addressing the board orally. That being true, presumably we will be reading their comments into the record. Jen will do that. So I think it may make sense to start with the comments from Rob from your team. So maybe you could start, and that would give other people with comments, a kind of a basis to make some comments.
Aaron, I'm sorry, before we start, Steve Gottman just emailed, he's having trouble getting in. If Jamie can resend him the link.
Yeah, Jamie, this is Mike Sturthouse. I see that I'm up. I used Rob's link to get into the meeting, and that might preclude Rob from entering the meeting.
Rob's in.
I'm here, Mike.
Oh, okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure because I see his name under my picture, so thank you. Okay.
Let's see. Tim, can you just tell Steve to just tap in by phone before he comes in through the thing? We can give him the phone number, right?
I'll work on it. I just got to log on my phone.
All right, we'll give this another minute and then we'll get started, and hopefully Steve will join us quickly. Rob, when we get started, are you going to be the first one?
Yeah. And if we could have Stephanie have access to share her screen so we can put the map up for everyone, that would be great.
All she has to do is hit share screen.
You got that,
Great.
Stephanie? Okay. We're all set with that. Okay, good. Hopefully Steve will be joining us either by phone or video. So why don't we get started? Rob, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. We appreciate this opportunity to speak again. So this proposed rezoning deals with our client's property at 12 Hearn Road. It's at the corner of US 9 and Hearn Road. As you can see on the map there, the town has previously rezoned this property twice following its initial zoning. The first time was entirely as land conservation. And then after my client objected to that, there was a new rezoning last year to what is shown here as the green line that is now being proposed to be readopted again in this introductory local law that we're having a public hearing on. So if you could look at the property has some environmental resources down in the southern end, including Drummond Creek and the DEC wetlands that have the buffer area shown there in the hatched line that Stephanie's pointing to. And what we are proposing is an adjustment to the town's split zone line to the red line instead, that we believe would preserve developments of more development rights for my client, but also serve the town's intended goals of protecting those environmental resources that you see there in the southern end of the property. So that's what we're proposing now. And if Mike would start, we'll start a little bit with the history of the property and it was prior approved, and then Stephanie can talk about the significant development issues that the town's proposed zoning line, the green line, has presented under the town zoning code. So Mike, you want to?
Sure. Good evening. As Rob said, my name is Mike Sturthouse, and I, like Rob, am an attorney at Whiteman, Osterman and Hanna, representing the property owner of the parcel now being considered for a zoning law amendment. My testimony this evening is intended to provide the board with some historical context for the property and how it's been zoned. I was the counsel back in 2009 for the prior property owner when the town planning board granted a conditional site plan and special use permit to develop the property as a medical office and imaging center facility under the previous commercial zoning designation. At that time, the applicant worked really hard with the town's planning staff, several meetings with the planning staff, with the planning board, and as well as planning board council to develop a really viable site plan for the commercial use of this property that was compliant with federal, state, and local laws, was also respectful of the planning board's concerns and those raised by members of the public in hearings such as the one we're attending this evening. These concerns included the protection of the Drummond Creek corridor. I know the town has expended significant resources in studying the viability of that corridor, both as a natural resource and as a wildlife travel corridor. And in fact, at that time, the applicant proposed to establish a no-build protection area that encompassed the stream corridor, as well as the wetlands and the steep slopes, by agreeing to record a declaration of covenants, restrictive covenants, on the deed for the property that would prevent development of those areas, but would still allow use of the full lot acreage for the density calculations and other area coverage requirements. The restricted area consisted of over 20 acres of the site and would have provided for undeveloped open space and a protective buffer for the Drummond Creek. The restrictive covenant was prepared in collaboration with the planning board and the planning board's attorney at the time, Karen Hagan, and was made a condition of the approvals. The boundary line marking the restricted area closely resembles the alternative zoning boundary that we have suggested as a reasonable alternative to the one presented in the town's local law amendment under consideration this evening. Both are protective of the site's natural resources while allowing the property owner reasonable area to accommodate its development goals. The latter, which should be an important consideration in reasonably applied zoning restrictions. In contrast, the split zone boundary proposed by the board in this local law amendment accomplishes neither goal, as it cuts directly down the site's steep slopes across the wetland areas and bisects the stream. The line also removes readily developable lands from the property owner, with no apparent purpose or benefit in doing so that is consistent with the goals of either the commercial or the conservation zoning district. And for these reasons, we're respectfully requesting that the board consider the alternative that we presented. Thank you.
Stephanie,
Thanks, Michael.
you want to talk a little bit about how it actually affects the development area?
Sure.
That's you, Rob. We're having trouble hearing you.
I'll chime in and he can get closer to the mic for the next,
Okay.
For the close-up of this. So Stephanie Ferradino, for the record, one of the attorneys for the applicant. As you heard at last week's meeting, there are practical land use and zoning issues caused directly from the town's actions, which may not have been contemplated or intended at the time of the second rezone. While the focus has been on the use of the property, here converting more than 2/3 of the property from commercial to land conservation, the zoning impacts of this action have never been mentioned by town officials or during the prior meetings. When the town rezoned the property to 2 zones on a single lot, it impacted code provisions that extended beyond the use of the property. The possible unintended results of your actions also impact the dimensional requirements for the site, and those are found in your bulk schedule as part of your zoning code. When we talked with your town attorney handling the litigation, Leah Everhart, she said it was clear to her that the land conservation lands cannot be used in the zoning calculations, even though the 2 zones are located on a single parcel. This affects green space, the usable land, which is established by the maximum lot coverage in your bulk regulations, the location and placement of stormwater, and the site development area as determined by the setbacks. When the property was zoned wholly commercial, it consisted of 35 acres, 17.5 of which were usable because you've got a 50% lot coverage allowable in that prior zone, while the remaining 17.5 would have been green space. As you heard from the earlier presentation, we were intending to conserve more than that, and over 20 acres of the site would have been restricted for green space. As shown on the prior site plan, the full area that the town seems to want to protect but didn't was to be preserved and untouched. And so, as you can see, the development in the prior approved site plan was in this area, with the restricted area covering here, where all of the kind of naturally sensitive area exists. As you can see from the line as it was drawn, you're exposing the stream, the buffers, and the wetlands all here to development. Potentially, we could get perhaps variances through the DEC process in order to build on these sensitive resources. And I don't think that's the town's intention. I think your intention would actually be better met by restricting this part of the land from the red line down, as opposed to having this part, the stream itself, caught in the development zone. Under the new zoning, with the maximum percent of lot coverage, which here in the C4 district is 50%, we go from what we had previously, 17.5 usable acres under that C7 zone, to 5.85 usable acres. So we are less than 1/3 of what we were allowed to be utilized previously. With the proposed red line, we gain an acre, so we're at 6.8 usable acres, because the red line shows a division which would allow 13.6% of the 35-ish acres to be utilized as C4, and then half of that would result in the 6.8. The other items that are found in your bulk calculation also include setbacks. So we have 50 feet and 40 feet for front and side yards, and those are now going to be calculated from where the zone falls, not the property lines. And in every other town property, you measure setbacks from property lines, not zoning lines. So we're being treated differently, and it does affect the developable space if we have to come 40 or 50 feet off of this lot. This not lot line, but this zoning line. The new cut line also impacts our area for stormwater treatment, and that's something that could otherwise have occurred in some of this sensitive space. It affects the density because you've got minimum lot sizes of 40,000 square feet, which is just under an acre. So we go from the original zoning, which had 17 viable acres, now down to 5. And we can't use land conservation lands for stormwater or any other accessory uses, such as parking. There are some alternatives to resolving these bulk items. The town could resolve these issues with the creation of an overlay district on the land conservation land, but again, that would impact land conservation properties throughout the town. You could create a zoning amendment specific to this property and include language which provides clarity that bulk calculations can be based on the lot, not where the zone falls within a lot. Or more preferably, you could just adopt our red line and we will adhere to the restrictions with regard to the bulk calculations. As you consider the red line that we have offered to resolve this issue in a way, it provides a win-win for the town. It protects all of your sensitive property, not just some of it, and all of the sensitive components, including the Drummond Creek, which falls right here. And it also provides developable land for the town's commercial base. We hope you will consider the red line as a kind of step towards working towards joint resolution of this matter.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephanie. Anyone else from the owner's team? Okay, you know what I'd like to do now then is, Jen, maybe I think now is a good time for you to read the written comment, because then other people who are listening will hear what has to be read anyway, and it might allow them to cut their comments down if what they meant to say is in the reading. So Jen, are you all set? We didn't lose Jen, did we, Jamie?
No, she's still on.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep. Are you all set
Okay.
to read the okay.
I sure am.
Okay.
Okay, so there's been 3 letters submitted from residents to be read into the minutes. The first one, I'm going to read them off by the order of arrival. As the first one comes from a Sue Ann and William Raymond. As an adjoining property owner, we have major concerns regarding the proposed commercial construction project at 12 Hearn Road. 1, any type of construction at this location will destroy the natural rural environment of the area. 2, using the phrase, "not in my backyard," we don't need any commercial construction in our backyard. 3, water. A, the supply that we have available now will be destroyed by the removal of trees and the amount of earth that is expected to be removed. B, people living here on the ridge understand country living and conserve their water usage. C, most residents here have had to drill deeper wells as the water is becoming in short supply. D, will the owner developer supply us on the ridge when we all run out of water? Item 4, wildlife is affected as their freedom to roam will be threatened and their habitat destroyed. 5, invasion of privacy by ruining the rural areas, building so close to residential property. We enjoy the quiet peacefulness of the natural wooded area. 6, traffic in the area will increase. There's enough traffic now that takes away from the rural setting. 7, lighting. How much will there be? We don't need or want to be lit up like a busy downtown area. It's supposed to be country living and serene. 8, it's sad that a residential area with people that have generational roots here has to put up with commercial development by someone who wants to make money on a property purchase, especially when that someone doesn't live here. We folks here on the ridge are older, retired, and just don't want to see the destruction of the area with commercial development. How much more do we need? Will there be any great benefit to us as a residential community? Thank you, Sue Ann and William Raymond. The second letter is submitted by a Francis Heitman of 4007 Silver Beach Road. Dear Supervisor O'Connor, I am writing to express my concerns about the proposed zoning changes and construction proposal for the property of 12 Hearn Road. My primary concerns are, 1, the removal of a great volume of soil and trees on the 12 Hearn Road property that has potential of disrupting the underground water to Malta Ridge residents on Hearn, Silver Beach Roads, and Malta Avenue Extension is of great concern. Such disruption of the land and trees has great potential to disturb the well water of all the families on Malta Ridge. As an example, I recently experienced a major sudden issue with my well. In preparation for the new 8,000 square foot wellspring facility on Route 9 on Malta Ridge, trees were felled, soil moved, and well drilling activity occurred in the spring of 2020. Suddenly after this activity, not far from my home, my well water suddenly developed a new mineral composition, which caused damage to my whole house water system. I had to replace most of the system, clean and clear water lines of the new deposits, and install a chlorination system in my well. All the plumbing, appliances, fixtures, and water lines in my home needed to be cleaned, cleared, and repaired. With this recent experience, I am very concerned that future disruption of trees and soil on 12 Hearn Road property of Malta Ridge, even closer to my property at 4007 Silver Beach Road on Malta Ridge, will create another problem with my water, or even worse, eliminate my well water supply. Is the town prepared to compensate or replace the wells of property owners if their wells are adversely affected? 2, additionally, removal of trees and leveling of the land on 12 Hearn Road, which serves as a sound buffer for the already very loud Friday night noise level from Saratoga Speedway, will only serve to increase the projection of sound. If construction proceeds, with special sound reduction materials be used in construction to mitigate sound amplification and reverberation. 3, with any changes in natural landscape, I am concerned about the decreased wildlife habitat in the area. Wildlife will now be diverted to other areas, possibly Route 9, creating traffic hazards. 4, the increase in vehicle traffic to commercial operation increases noise, gas emissions, not only from increased vehicles, but also from maintenance equipment for the property, such as lawn machines and snow removal. The impact on the entire environment will be significant. In addition to the air and noise pollution, there will now be chemicals added to sensitive environment in the form of lawn and plant fertilizers, winter ice melts to paved areas, and general chemicals used to maintain the exterior of the structure. 6, Saratoga Lake is a precious resource in many ways to our area. Any changes in rivers and streams that feed the lake will impact the lake. Malta Ridge and Drummond Watershed are uphill from the lake. I'm very concerned that this construction and disruption will impact not only families on Malta Ridge, but also many more who live around our precious lake. I would like to request that the town board consider options than commercial construction on the 12 Hearn Road property. Sincerely yours, Francis Heitman. And the third letter comes from Peter Brooks. Dear Mr. O'Connor, I write as a resident of Malta who lives not far from Hearn Road. I'd like to ask the town board to consider protecting as much of the steep wooded hillside between Hearn Road and Route 9 as possible, because it is part of the Drummond Creek stream corridor. Drummond Creek flows through an amazing corridor of natural beauty, rich in wildlife. It's remnant of the diverse community of native plants and animals which thrived here before major human developments took place. The forest of maple, beech, oak, elm, ash, pine, and hemlock still hold many mature trees of massive size. These plant communities in turn provide food and shelter to deer, fox, and fisher, as well as countless smaller animals. Scores of species of birds and insects thrive in Drummond Creek corridor as well. A local treasure are our native turtle species, several of which migrate up the creek from Saratoga Lake each spring, then trace their ways out into tributaries, streams, and brooks. It's quite a treat to come across these primitive reptiles digging nests and depositing eggs to hatch out into the next generation. It's a major miracle that the Drummond Creek corridor, such an intricate, complex ecosystem, still exists in our developing town. It's a ribbon of life, all connected by and completely dependent on the constant flow of clean water moving steadily towards Saratoga Lake. Drummond Creek Quarter has been living, breathing, and thriving in this way for at least 10,000 years since the most recent glacier retreated, and will probably continue to do so for the next 10,000 if we don't interrupt or destroy it. The quarter performs an abundant ecological work for us, all for free. These include temperature moderation, flood control, and atmospheric carbon capture, just to name a few. It can provide unrendering opportunities for our environmental health and educational enjoyment, but only if we protect it from our own disruptions. And what are those disruptions? Attacks on the integrity of its forest cover and on its sustainable flow of clean water. To let Drummond Creek Quarter continue to provide us with these blessings, we must simply stay out of its way. If it dies, it will be the death by 1,000 cuts, along with its length, the hillside stripped of vegetation, one culvert dumping parking lot runoffs there, a gradual accumulation of insults and wounds over the years. The hillside between Hearn Road and Route 9 is exactly what we need to protect. It's steep, it's forested. Rainfall and snowmelt run straight down the side into Drummond Creek. If we permit it to be bulldozed, cleared, or built upon, the Drummond Creek corridor will suffer one of those big irreversible 1,000 cuts towards destruction. Many thanks, Peter Brooks.
Okay,
That's it
thank
for
you,
the
Jen.
comment.
Does that conclude the written comments submitted for this public hearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then I'll open it up to the public. Would anyone like to be heard on this issue of the Hearn Road rezoning? Jamie, do we have anyone with hands up?
Not that I see, no, not yet.
Okay, let me give it another moment or two so that, people can deal with the Zoom technology.
Darren, I do have something to say, but I'll wait to see if there are any folks out there with their hands up first that want to speak on this issue. This is Mark.
Okay,
It looks like John Viola might be wanting to talk.
John, you're
John.
muted. Do you want to, John Viola, you're muted. Do you want to address the board? John, we can't hear you. You're muted. You have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now, Mr. Chairman?
There you go.
I'm
Yep,
sorry.
we're good.
Little problem with the computer tonight. Just a couple of things, and I'll be very careful on how I address this, but the immediate adverse impact on the existing homes that are presently on Hearn Road and Silver Beach Road is something that I would wish the board would take into effect. The safety of Hearn Road, trying to exit Hearn Road both onto Route 9 or onto Malta Avenue is a very, very dangerous scenario. More than one vehicle trying to exit Hearn Road, you have no vision of sight of any cars coming up or down Malta Avenue. The other thing too, just food for thought. There are presently more than 13 medical art facility buildings along the Route 9 corridor. And as of this day, there is not one of them that is fully occupied. So is there a need for another medical arts facility in this area? Probably not. But most important would be the adverse impact on not only the homeowners, but the Drummond Creek corridor itself. I mean, we know the board, I'm sure, is well aware of all the flooding issues down in the Silver Beach area and the Lakeside Acres area. So I would just ask that the board consider these facts before making a decision tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, John. And one thing I just want to point out before we go to the next commentator, in that the medical arts, that was what was proposed years ago and dealt with by the planning board and is off the table. There is no current development strategy for this proposal, right. Medical arts or non-medical arts. So, we're not dealing with this proposal from a view that any particular project will be proposed for the property. Thank you, John. Would anyone else like to address the board?
Darren, I guess now if there's no one else, if I can, I'd like to speak.
Okay.
This is Mark. As John stated as well, I'd like to first of all state that I'm speaking on behalf of just myself as a resident and neighbor of 12 Hearn Road. I'm not in any way attempting to or trying to appear as though I'm representing the town in any way, whether it be deputy supervisor, planning board, or Oats committee. This is strictly myself speaking with my thoughts, as I've done many times in the past, as you folks are aware. I really don't know where to begin with this whole thing, this mess, as I call it at this point. I've watched this unfold since 2008. That was the very first time I was even made aware that the property right next to my home had been rezoned to commercial from residential. I had no idea that that had occurred. And in a letter from the zoning board in 2008, I was informed that there was an application in front of them for a commercial project. That's when I was first made aware that this was no longer residential. With that being said, I guess we'll get right to the crux of things. We've all talked about this enough times. You're sick of hearing me talk, but nonetheless, here I am because I have to. I've heard about the lines. I call it a line in the sand several different times in terms of an LC and a commercial division, if you will, a red line that was from the northeast portion to the southwest portion of the parcel. And along with the lines, I hear talk of environmentally sensitive areas, how we meaning the parcel owner and his representatives, his council, that we are looking to protect all of the environmentally sensitive areas. I would like to point out that the entire parcel is environmentally sensitive for a number of reasons. Number one, first and foremost, and some of my neighbors, obviously, it sounds that they have written to you, water. Water is the precious commodity that without it, your home is basically worthless. I can tell you that because I've been in that situation on Hearn Road in my home. In 1993, state of New York was doing some work at the end of Hearn Road where it meets Route 9. They were dredging out culverts. I never even knew the culvert existed until after they were gone, because they cleaned out all the shrubs, the brush, vegetation, everything that was there. When they left, there was a flowing stream after about a week's time, a flowing stream. Within 4 days, my well was dry. If you walk anywhere within this parcel of land, and I said this before, but I'm going to say it again, there are a host of small tributaries or small springs, whatever you want to call them, that ooze out of the bank of the ridge, not just down near the Drummond Creek, but all the way up not far from my home. They are wet constantly. You go there right now, I can guarantee you that you will see water, not snow, but water. There's a reason for that. The water hits shale bed at about 60 feet below my home. It then runs off the ledge. All of the soil south of the ridge proper, which is where all of these homes are, myself and my neighbors that have written to you, we are on the ridge proper, the very top peak. Anything to the south of us, you can refer to that or think of it as a levee. I know this because I've spoken with well drillers. And when my well was dry and I had to have my well re-drilled in 93, I spoke with him about, geez, is it possible there's a correlation? And this is what he said. Absolutely, there's a correlation. In fact, I'm going to tell you that's exactly why your well went dry. All of the earth, all of the vegetation, everything around you serves as a berm, whether it's actually raised or whether it's just in place around you, that slows the spread and the flow of water underground. The more soil is removed downhill, the faster that water will flow away. In essence, that's what makes your well and your reservoir drop down. You've now opened up a part of the levee, so to speak, in the way of soil and allowed it to flow freely. Think now about this parcel, the last approvals, which were back in 2009. Those approvals allowed for, surprisingly and scary, 140,000 cubic yards of dirt. Along with that 140,000 cubic yards of soil are all of the trees that are above the soil. Just let that sink in for a minute. All of that is going to not only affect me, my neighbor behind me, the neighbor behind them, and so on and so on. This ridge hugs its water supply tightly. Even if the developer that may or may not come in the future, if these proposals and all these plans go forward, if in fact that were to happen and they said, you know what, we're going to be great. We're going to pay for and supply you with all the water you can possibly drink because we're going to have a municipal water system in here. Even with that being said, that infrastructure comes in late into the game after your well is already dry, well after excavation, well after tree felling, well after all of those things that are done. You're flushing your toilet with buckets of water. You're brushing your teeth in cups of water. You are coveting every bit of water in your sink to wash dishes more than once. I know this because I have been through it. It adversely affects the water. This ridge, through hydro studies, shows we don't have an abundance of water up here. That's probably not going to change anytime in the near future. So when it's said that the sensitive areas are going to be addressed by moving this line, I'm sorry, I'm saying no, it's not. Yes, the wildlife as well. Yes, the buffering from trees. You know what? Even if you remove trees right up to the line, you know what's going to happen? I can tell you what's going to happen. The trees over on the adjoining property owners will eventually probably tumble. Some of them, not all of them, but some of them. That's how trees work. They rely on the other trees around them. You clear cut a forest, you're going to see trees fall for probably 5 or more years after that. They're used to other trees around it to serve as a windbreak. That will also be gone. This is just going to be a huge domino effect. Let's address the steep slopes. Far greater than 15%. The area now where we want to move this line, or I should say where council wants to move the line, that's in some of the steepest sloped areas of that property. I know because I've been on it many, many times. I've been on it with GPS. I've dropped waypoints that mark where all of the springs come out of the banks, where all the steep slopes are, critical areas. That line is going to gobble every single one of them up. In terms of the Drummond Creek with the existing line, the fear that, well, we're going to cut through the Drummond Creek, there are measures in place through both DEC, American or Army Corps of Engineers that protect Drummond Creek within a certain degree. No one's going to build into Drummond Creek because they can't. They can't get near it within 50 to 100 feet or so. So that's not going to happen based upon the line which the town of Malta has drawn previous to tonight. And along with that, I would like to commend the town of Malta, the town board, for having the foresight to see this is a critically sensitive area for more than one reason. This is going to affect many lives, and not just the environmental impact, but it's just a host of reasons why. 10 years have changed or have gone by, and a lot has changed since the first approvals. A lot has changed, and not so much for the better. If I could just very briefly, I've made some notes when Mr. Sturthouse, Stephanie, and Rob had spoken. Yes, Mr. Sturthouse had expressed how he had worked with the planning board to basically protect as much as possible the environmental aspects and address things back then that were of importance to the town and for environmental purposes. Again, a lot has changed in 10 years. there's a lot more development going on, which is going to stress our water supply up here on the ridge even more than it did back in 2009.
Mark, how much more do you have where we might come up with some time?
I'm sorry, and I'll end it right there because I think enough has been said. I hope that it has been. I just hope that people really start to listen.
Okay,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much, Mark. Jamie, is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
No one has their hand raised.
Supervisor, just as a point of clarification, I think everyone should be aware, but in case they aren't, our last proposal where we had a viable proposal for the property, we would have brought water to the site. So I think that's important for everyone to note that we had intended to bring water to the site, which would have alleviated many of the concerns raised by the public.
What proposal was that, Stephanie? What was the development proposal?
That was for the medical arts building that was previously approved at the site. It was approved with the requirement.
You're not proposing that. You're not proposing that now, are you?
We don't have any proposal before you. We've been through this, John.
Okay, well, your
Listen
comment
to the prior meeting. We have no proposal.
Your comment suggests that we should consider that water may be brought to the site.
It was required as part of the last approval, so it would seem that it might be required again.
Thank you for cutting me off. Your comment to us is that you had advanced a proposal that would bring water to the site, as if that's supposed to be a consideration for us this evening. That's why you make such comments.
Because your planning board has the power.
You're proposing a development that's going to bring water to this site.
We're not proposing anything. I am reminding the board.
But we shouldn't consider that water might.
Proposal.
We shouldn't consider that because you have no proposal to bring water to the site.
I am simply stating, if you let me finish, that our prior proposal required by your planning board, not, by the goodness of our hearts, that we bring water to the site. It would flow then that your current planning board, many of the members who are identical to people who were sitting on the prior application, may have a similar requirement if we brought something forward. That's all I intended to say, is that our prior proposal would have alleviated the public's concerns.
Okay, I just have a quick comment. Yeah, and the water thing has to do with some of the other things that were mentioned. I think, some of the problems that are mentioned can be dealt with in the planning board process, as opposed to right now, because we don't have anything that's being proposed. I mean, I guess the planning board does have the power to, require that approval is dependent on bringing water or having some buffer or, other kind of things that, we don't have to go through every single detail of them now because there's nothing specific proposed. That's my understanding of where we are.
Karen, could I just ask that the site plan be presented again that Stephanie had up?
John, again, we're having trouble hearing you. You're fading out.
Could I ask that Stephanie put, as she did earlier, the site plan, the lot line drawings up again, please?
We don't have any site plan, but I'm happy to put up the map which shows.
Diagram they had earlier. Could you kindly?
Yep, this is not a site plan. It's simply a map.
I understand that. Can I ask what the label is on that plan sheet? Just read that for me, please.
That's medical center development,
Thank
and
you.
I can't see the date on this, but it was simply because we utilized that prior.
You've answered my question. Thank you.
Well, John, I'm going to let her finish. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah, I think you're making a mountain out of something that literally doesn't exist. This area probably just didn't get revised because we didn't ask them to revise it. It has nothing to do with any proposal because we have no proposal. We're here because the town initiated a process, just like we were in the summer when you raised the identical concerns, John.
And you're not proposing to bring water at this time?
We are not. We have no proposal on the table. We're here simply in response to public comment for an application that the town on its own initiative commenced. We'd be happy to resolve this in court.
Okay, Jamie, do we have anybody else who'd like to make a comment during the public hearing?
I've seen no hands raised.
Okay, I'll give it a-
Supervisor, Supervisor, this is Jennifer Holmes. I did find one more residential letter, very brief, if you would like me to read that.
Yes, please do.
Okay, this is from a Catherine Nichols, and it says, Dear Mr. O'Connor, my name is Catherine Nichols. I have been a Malta resident for 68 years. Through those years, I have witnessed many changes within our town, some good, some not. I believe the change which the board is currently contemplating would be detrimental to our area and would directly impact the quality of life of many Malta Ridge residents. Deforestation, removal of soil, rerouting creeks and streams, all would have a negative impact on our neighborhood. Wells going dry, erosion, noise and light pollution, and the destruction of wildlife habitats are but a few of the effects that would result. We and many, many of our neighbors on the ridge have already had to replace our wells at least once. I urge you to consider the ramifications of such an action, and please do not change the land conservation boundaries. Respectfully yours, Catherine Nichols.
Thanks, Jen. Would anyone else like to address the board? Okay, at this point, I am going to keep the public hearing open for written comment only. So that being said, it's 6:50, but we will not be closing the public hearing. We'll be keeping it open for the purposes of further written comment only.
For how long,
Okay.
Dan? For
But
how long?
at least until the next meeting, our meeting at the end of February. At that point, we can either close it or keep it open for written comment further, depending on what the board decides to do. Okay, we'll move on to the next agenda, and that's comments. And before we turn it over, I would like to hear from Mark and Alyssa. I think I would like to hear about the event last Thursday. Mark, and I think Alyssa's on. Is Alyssa on, Jamie?
I saw Alyssa.
Yes,
on
Alyssa's there. I see her. So, Mark, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, just really briefly, yeah, we had the drive-through food pantry on Thursday the 28th. I'm not going to talk a lot about it. I didn't put it together. My hat's off to those that did. And that one of which is Alyssa Benway. I'm going to turn it over to her real quickly here. But in any event, I was there helping out with some of the other folks, a lot of the volunteers, some town employees, some town officials. And you know what? It was quite the event to see. I mean, to see people coming together, it kind of does truly restore your faith in humanity when you can see people reaching out, helping those that are in need. And when you see people, some of which had tears in their eyes as you're putting food in their car, that if that doesn't reach out and just grab you by the heart, I don't know what does. But again, this is Alyssa's baby and her crew, so I'm going to hand it over to her. And thank you very much, Alyssa.
Alyssa.
Yeah, so kudos to my staff and Denise, and we had around probably 40 to 50 volunteers, Town of Malta employees helping out throughout the whole day. We gave out close to 20,000 pounds of food, probably to around 200 families/cars. So successful all around.
Alyssa, I want to add too, I mean, it was an amazing event. The number of volunteers that were there. I did send your thanks to my fellow Rotarians. I noticed, I spoke to a group that were pickleball players that went in to play pickleball afterwards. Of course, there were some Malta seniors there, so it was a lot of different people. I did hear some conversation that we may be planning another one.
Well, Denise, the food bank is always looking for hosts to, have these kind of food drives. So Denise took a breather last week, and she said maybe tomorrow she'll reach out and see what their need is, and if we can help out again, see kind of what their schedule is, if they need us as a site, in the spring.
Yeah, and now we're all pros. So
yeah, exactly.
I mean, once we went to 2 lines, and it went a lot more smoothly. So worked out well, and it was a lot of work for you guys. So thank you.
I want to thank every everybody for showing up and helping us out. But I also want to say the rec department had this planned very well. They did a superb job. It showed us all they can organize quickly and handle it superbly. Thank you all.
Yep, I totally agree. Thank you, Cynthia and Craig, and Mark. It was great. I mean, the second I got there, I said, wow, somebody who knows what they're doing was planning this. So really, really nice job. So thank you very much, Alyssa, and thanks to Denise and your team.
A little warmer at 8 a.m. would be nice
Yeah.
next time.
It actually wasn't bad with that sun. It was beautiful. That
Yeah.
really was.
If you got there at 7:30 or 8,
pretty
it was a little
cold first
chilly.
thing.
Yeah.
Well, we did have the frozen chicken, so there was a lot more heft to it than what Cynthia had. So we got more of a workout, I think. A cardio, got the blood pumping. So that's why my coat was off for a while.
Okay. Yep. Thank you very much. Okay. Any other comments or announcements from town board members?
Darren, I just had a real couple quick things. As everyone knows, this is a kickoff to Black History Month, where we acknowledge, reach out, and notice the achievements and recognition of people of color, African community, African Americans, Caribbean as well, and that's going to go on for the whole month. So I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention that to at least acknowledge. In terms of tomorrow, we know that Puxatawny is going to come out of his den. Hopefully we'll not see a shadow at Groundhog Day, which will mean an early spring. So I'm going to go with that.
He wears a mask. Make sure he has a mask when he comes out.
You know he'll have a mask on, John. So hopefully we won't know if he sees a shadow or not. But in any event, with the snow, I'm hoping not much sun, so no shadow.
Yeah.
That's all I got. Thanks,
All right.
Darren.
Craig.
To say, yeah. Over the past weeks, we've heard a lot of things about the incident at the Capitol. Malta was thrust into the headlines from here to San Francisco. I want to put a little bit of a twist on that. I want to thank Sharon for being on our zoning board, helping out in town, shuttling vets, because she stood up for our rights at the Capitol. They made an example out of her. But the thing that she did, she was standing up for everybody in town and in the country for our freedom of speech and our right to protest. She did nothing wrong. They made an example out of her, and she is a prime example of the many volunteers that serve hours and hours to our town. Thank you, Sharon.
Okay, thank you, Craig. Any other comments from town board members?
Darren, may I?
Or John?
Just briefly, we heard Friday, during the last week or a little bit more, there's been announcements on high-risk sports being opened up so that our kids can get playing again. The chairman of our county board had a press conference on Friday, made an announcement, and indicated there's going to be further decision-making, hopefully this week, about getting kids back playing the high-risk sports. So I'm encouraged by the county's leadership, unlike other counties that have kind of arbitrarily just drawn a line. It looks like Saratoga County is being a little more thoughtful about how they approach the issue, and hopefully before the week's out, we'll see some good, sensible guidance on letting our kids get back playing the sports that they love.
Right, I agree. And the county is having a special Board of Supervisors meeting on Thursday of this week, I believe, to try to put some flesh on this and see if we can, get those games rolling again in a safe way. Any other board members? Okay. Department heads, we have your monthly reports. Thank you very much. But does anyone have anything to add to them? Okay, we're good on that. All right. Any comments or questions from town residents on any matter whatsoever? Jamie, do we have any hands up?
Kathy Eitzman has her hands up.
Kathy,
Hey, I finally figured out how to raise my hand.
all right.
We had a Malta senior meeting today. There were 25 people there. And I just want to appreciate all the people that have at the food bank. Denise and Lissa, all the crew did a great job. And I just want to give kudos to that. Also, thank you to Alyssa and the town board for supporting the Malta seniors. We are having our meetings once a month. We're exercising once a month. We're crafting once a month. And we are continuing to keep our health, our sanity, and our sense of humor. So thank you so much for everything.
Thanks very much, Kathy. And, if I could just add a little bit to that, most people out there know, what happened a week ago in terms of, the sudden notice we got from the state that vaccines were being provided to Saratoga County that had to be used basically immediately. The town supervisors were called and asked to put together lists of people who had particular difficulty getting out of their homes, older people, and so that the vaccine could be provided to them by EMS. Kathy did a tremendous job in putting together a list as best as we could. Was it perfect? No, it definitely was not. There were many that we could not reach because we didn't have the number of vaccines. But we did reach a good number of people in Malta, and we're glad that Scott's crew at EMS was able to drive around the town and provide vaccines to people who had trouble getting out of their houses. So, we're hopeful that we get more. We don't know that it's going to happen. And, because it wasn't a perfect process, we're trying to prepare for when and if that happens again. So Kathy and I are getting together a list of all Malta seniors. And on that list, we'll have, listed their name, address, phone number, and whether they've gotten the vaccine yet. So that we'll have a list that's ready to provide. If we get these some notices again, we'll be able to jump on it basically within a minute. What we do want to warn the seniors, once you get on this list, please do not rely on it. We cannot guarantee that you're going to get the list, get the vaccine because you're on this list. So please don't stop trying to get it in some other way, making appointments in some other venue. So that being said, we'll move on. Any other comments from town residents?
Kathy still has her hand up.
Kathy.
Yeah. Just a quick comment on that. I want to say that the people on the list were not all senior members, but they were members and residents of the town of Malta. So I want to say thank you for that. We've had good response to this list, and they do know that it is not an appointment or a guarantee, but they're anxious to be put on a list. So thank you so much, Darren, for taking care of that.
Sure. And I think Kathy meant they're not members of the Malta seniors. They are seniors. They all were seniors, I think.
Yes.
I'm right about that, right, Kathy? I think they were all well over 65, most of them. Okay, any other comments from anybody? Okay, we'll move on to the next item. Do we have a motion to accept the minutes from January 25th?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, let's see. The next item on the list is a discussion concerning Hearn Road zoning. And what I'd like to do, before we get involved in more, is go over part 2 of the environmental assessment form that I think was provided to the board today. We'll go through each of these items to determine what the answers to this particular proposal. I note again, as I noted during the public hearing, that we have no current development strategy, nothing specific proposed. And because of that, I think a lot of these questions are going to be answered no, that there isn't an impact based on this particular proposal. That doesn't mean that there won't be impacts. If something is proposed, then there would be an impact and the discussion would certainly get more specific at that point.
Darren, just quickly, if I might.
Sure, John.
A couple of points. One is town board members may not be aware that there is in our town code a 100-foot no disturbance buffer on both sides of a stream that's classified as D and above, which I believe Drummond Creek is. You couldn't disturb that 200-foot swath through there in any event under the town code, even though it's shown as being within the commercial portion of the revised zoning. Second is I respectfully disagree that the line is arbitrary. By going no further to the east, it protects against further impacts on the adjoining residential property. Something that I think is a rational point to draw a line and is based on an appropriate policy choice. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, and I agree with that, John. All right, let's go through these factors and then we can have a more of a discussion as we move on. The first item in part 2 is impact on land. Does the proposed action have any impact on the land, on the construction, physical alteration, land surface? Again, as I mentioned, this is a zoning change that doesn't itself have any effect or impact. And incidentally, I'm going to go through this, but if any town board member wants to address any particular item, please either raise your hand or just interrupt me.
I would, if I don't want to dominate here, but I would like to make one point, please, on this.
Sure.
I think, most of us have either, walked along the road frontage here or seen this property from a vehicle. And I do not perceive how under any circumstance you could do any kind of commercial development on this property without clearing and leveling a substantial portion. It is wooded. The topography, I guess, and Mark would know, is partly the result of prior sand removal on the site. To do any kind of development on this property, I think it's only reasonable to assume that there's going to have to be some kind of significant soil removal or grading and some substantial deforestation. So regardless of what's done there, if any kind of commercial development occurs, to my way of thinking, there will be some of these impacts.
Can I just ask though, with regard to this, environmental impact statement, we're only considering the zoning change. So the action is the changing in the zoning. So by nature of changing the zoning, we're not altering the land, so the answer to that would still be no. What a new statement of findings would have to be issued when there is actually a project. And
well,
then
my point is, and perhaps I'm not being articulate, is that any commercial development, if commercial,
John, you're cutting out. We can't hear you.
Commercial would involve some kind of significant soil disturbance and grading and substantial deforestation, just because of the nature of the site as it is now. And I think our job is to consider what the reasonable development of the land might be based on the knowledge that we have.
Okay, and just a kind of a point of information, we are going through this process again to make sure we're correct on all of the procedural requirements of SECRA. So we're looking at this as if we are doing it again, that is from LC to split. All right, so that's the basis of this public hearing, not from changing it from the split, because we're kind of going back. The next item on the agenda on the part 2 is impact on geological features. Asks whether the proposed action results in the modification or destruction of or inhibit access to any unique or unusual landforms on the site, cliff, dunes, mineral, fossils, or caves. And I think John's first point he'd probably make as to this one too, and probably many of the other items we're going to discuss. I think my feeling on that is yes, there may well be proposals that could have that kind of impact, but we're not facing it right now. So my answer to that would be no.
Great.
The same thing basically for number 3, impacts on surface water. The proposed action may affect one or more wetlands or other surface water bodies. Again, since we don't have anything before us, it doesn't seem like this particular one does. What happens in the future may well have that kind of effect. 4, impact on groundwater. The specifics are the proposed action may result in new or additional use of groundwater or may have the potential to introduce contaminants to groundwater or an aquifer. And I think we heard a lot of comments about this. But again, if this zoning change is passed by this board, nothing's going to happen because it's going to be exactly the same. So, you know, when a proposal comes through, if and when it does, then obviously it may have it may have those effects. Number 5 is impact on flooding. The proposed action may result in development on land subject to flooding. Again, subject to the same comments that I made before. Impacts on air. The proposed action may include a state regulated air emission source. There's nothing in this proposal that would do that. 7, impacts on plants and animals. The proposed action may result in loss of flora and fauna. It could well be, and I want to emphasize to the people who wrote comments and who spoke today, that there may well be some time in the future something specific is proposed that is going to require a yes answer to this and very, very close inspection to see what's being proposed is permissible. But as of now, this change doesn't do that. 8 is impact on agricultural resources. Again, the same kind of analysis that I thought relevant to the other ones. 9, impact on aesthetic resources. The land use of the proposed action are obviously different from or are in sharp contrast to current land use patterns between the proposed project and a scenic or aesthetic resource. Again, that could easily happen when we have some specific proposal in front of us, but we don't now. The simple zoning change does not by itself put in effect any change that would warrant another answer to that question. 10 is the impact on historic and archaeological resources. The same kind of analysis, I believe. 11, impact on open space and recreation. The proposed action may result in a loss of recreational opportunities or a reduction of an open space resources designated in any adopted municipal open space plan. Again, the same kind of analysis. 12 is impact on critical environmental areas. And I think that's also the same analysis. 13 is impact on transportation. May result in a change to existing transportation systems. And I think the answer is no there also. Impact on energy may increase in the use of any form of energy. Well, obviously, if something concrete is proposed, then it would have an impact or could, depending on what's proposed. But the change now, I don't think has that impact. 15 is impact on noise, odor, and light. And again, as we heard on for some of the comments, especially some of the written ones, there may well be a specific proposal that does have that impact. But this one, standing alone, as I think we have to view it, doesn't. 16, impact on human health. Proposed action may have an impact on human health from exposure to new or existing sources of contaminants. And for the same analysis, I don't believe that this particular change has that impact. 17, consistency with community plans. The proposed action is not consistent with adopted land use plans. This was zoned commercial before the board acted a while ago to zone it split. So I don't think at this juncture we have, an answer that would prevent us from moving forward on that. Essentially the same reasons. Consistency with community character. The proposed project is inconsistent with the existing community character. Again, for the reasons that, we've described, the community character by virtue of this particular change is not going to be altered. So those are the consideration points in part 2 of the environmental assessment form. And now I'll open it up for just discussion among board members as to, what we want to do here. One of the things I was thinking that, I think I've discussed with one or two of you is I see merits in both. I see merits in both sides of this. I mean, John pointed out that, we drew this line to impact the intersection of 3 properties, the lands of Hammond, the lands of Raymond, and the big parcel at issue. So yes, there would be, that eliminated the impact of at least one of those neighbors, maybe another one to the southeast. So I think that diagonal line has merit. I think it is a rational line. On the other hand, in listening to the owner's team, I think they make some decent points that, a line that's more akin to what they've proposed, it all is also, a possibility. One of the things that, I think maybe the board might want to consider is moving that line that they've drawn a little bit north so that we do not, we're kind of clear of the wetland adjacent area marked with the hash marks. I think that would that would protect the town and the neighbors to more extent, certainly more extent than it was zone commercial, the whole thing. And to a greater extent than the line that the team has proposed, because we'd be a little north of that. I think that's one thing that the board, may want to consider. And so those are my comments. Other board members.
Yeah, but comment.
Craig.
Years ago, they had some severe flooding down at the bottom of Silver Beach Road. It happened twice in one summer. And I want to tell you, the cause of that flooding is from the land use from the Drummond Creek. No matter what happens to this property, we're going to increase our problem of flooding down on Silver Beach substantially. And I will be honest with you, there was at least 50 to 100 homes flooded out to their first floor substantially. Now, whatever happens up here on the property, they're going to have to level it out some. They're going to be taking trees out, and the problem is only going to get worse. I've heard very few talk about those flooding issues. We have a real problem here because no matter what happens, they got to clear property out and the problem will only get worse. The other issue is the drinking water. We all understand that they've had major well issues. Whatever happens, we're going to make the problem worse. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Greg. Other board members.
If I can, Darren.
Cynthia.
First of all, in a perfect world, we'd be able to leave this LC. Sorry, Stephanie, but the fact is, likely we're going to have to make some decision and some change. We all know that traffic on that road is problematic and will be problematic. Water's a problem. Obviously, the stormwater is going to be a problem. Those are issues that are going to have to be really seriously addressed in the site plan process. And, I don't think we're there right now because we don't have a project. And, I think it's my understanding that we have to, I suppose, do something. If we leave it LC, we will likely be seeing them in court. And of course, that's an unpredictable outcome at best. So, as much as like I say, I'd like to see that stay the same. If we can make a decision and do our very best to draw a line that will protect our natural resources, then I think we need to at least consider it. Unfortunately, like I say, LC be best, but.
Yeah, I agree with Cynthia. Obviously the best case scenario would be to have kept this completely LC, but that's just not an option. I think the line that's there now has some logic to it, but I also, like you said, Darren, I heard a lot of logic and practicality from what Stephanie and her team presented as well. So I would be open to either, leaving it as is or moving that line, the northern side of that line to open up a little bit more territory, and perhaps moving the southern side of the line slightly north to protect the more fragile wetlands areas.
Okay, thanks, Tim and Cynthia. Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Any other comments from board members?
This is a slight variation of the comments which are already tired of hearing, but our obligation is by statute is at the earliest possible time to consider impacts, and this is in the DC secret regs as well, at the earliest possible time to consider impacts which, quote, may be reasonably be expected to result from the proposed action. And to my way of thinking, if we're zoning this commercial, it may reasonably be expected that there will be serious changes to the topography on that property and to the vegetation on that property. And in fact, it's unreasonable to expect that there won't be those sorts of changes if any kind of commercial development occurs. So I believe that we have an obligation to address those items as part of our secret review. And if the board disagrees with me, which I respect the right to do, I think given that we're doing a long form EAF, that we ought to seriously consider conditioning any negative declaration should we decide to make a negative declaration on whomever develops the property, providing a public water supply to the property and adjoining properties that will be impacted.
Okay, that's a good point, John. And what I'd like to do is, if no one has any further comments, is not proceed with either any kind of a declaration, negative, positive, or whatever, but to leave this matter open without the board taking any action tonight, so that the board can, discuss the many, many comments we've heard today, and decide whether it's going to stick with the line that was, specified in the papers that were, prepared in anticipation of this meeting, or adjust the line a little bit moving forward. So unless there are any objections to that, we can move on to the next item on the agenda.
Darren, if I may, I'll be brief. This is Mark. I have a question just to kind of piggyback on what John was saying.
Now, hold on. I'm going to have to interrupt you, Mark.
Mark,
Hold on. All right. Mark, this was a discussion among town board members on this issue. So to the extent.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Comments right now, it would be as a deputy supervisor. So we're going to hold on that. If you want to make any other comments.
I'll wait till the end.
Citizen, right. Okay. So
thank you.
Any other comments by board members? Okay. we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is my very favorite item on tonight's agenda. And that is the Veterans Memorial honoring Dave Wallingford. And we have with us today in this Zoom call, Renee Farley. Renee, as all of us know, has been tirelessly working for Malta veterans. So Renee, I hope you don't mind, but can I ask you to read this resolution into the record?
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. Well, first, I'd like to thank everybody for the opportunity to even do this. And I just would like to acknowledge David's wife, Helena, who also served our country alongside of David in the Vietnam War. So 2 veterans of the Wallingford family. And getting to the resolution, I'm honored. So, whereas the Malta Veterans Appreciation Program, MVAP, has been administering an initiative to improve the Veterans Memorial over the past few years by landscaping the memorial, installing memorial markers, and laying commemorative bricks recognizing the contributions of our country's veterans. Whereas the memorial is located in a prominent location at the Town Hall complex, befitting the great service and sacrifice of our veterans. Whereas Captain T. Wallingford is a decorated combat veteran, having served in the United States Marine Corps from 1967 until his honorable discharge in 1970. And whereas for several decades, David has consistently given his time, energy, and very wise guidance to the town of Malta and to Saratoga County in so many capacities that it's difficult to identify all of them. And whereas Dave's loyalty to his town has been expressly vividly in time and effort that he has devoted to the MVA program and to the Veterans Memorial. And whereas the Town Board of Malta wishes to recognize Dave's contributions to the town in general, and in particular, to his service to America and to its veterans by naming the Veterans Memorial in his honor, now therefore be it resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Malta names the Veterans Memorial as follows: the Captain David T. Wallingford Veterans Memorial Park, and authorizes the supervisor of the Town of Malta to procure at town expense a suitable sign on the grounds of the memorial, subject to budgetary constraints. So I'm honored to read this resolution for a truly amazing hometown hero, David T. Wallingford. I want to thank the Town of Malta for always supporting our efforts. And to all 31 of you out there, on a brick, we can continue on this project. Thank you.
Thanks, Renee. And yes, I'd remind everybody that, yeah, the form that you use to purchase a brick for our memorial is on our website, and it's very easy to follow to put it in. Thank you so much, Renee, for reading the resolution. And
thank you.
The town and the country owe a huge debt to people like Captain Dave Wallingford and the other veterans. And so we are just really happy to propose this resolution to the board. Do we have a motion to adopt it?
Moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Renee. And,
Thank you.
And thank you, Captain Wallingford. Okay, the next item on the agenda is to the animal control intermunicipal agreement that we have, just in case the animal control officers of any particular town help out another town where the animal control officer isn't available. This one is between the town of Malta and the town of Milton.
So moved.
Second. Discussion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. The next item on the agenda is the 2021 renewal of low-income physical disability property tax exemption.
Moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next item on the agenda is the 2021 renewal of the low-income senior citizens property tax exemption.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Next item is a resolution establishing the summer pay rates and to authorize camp staff hire. And before we move that, we need to just make a typographical error change in the first whereas clause and the title to the actual numbers. We have to change the year 2020 to 2021. So as those, with those changes, do we have a motion?
Yes.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. The next item will authorize the purchase of a highway plow truck.
So
Moved.
moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. The next item authorizes us to get the New York State DOT permit for the Veterans Parade, tentatively scheduled for May 15th.
So moved.
Date's
Second.
wrong.
Whoops. May
Yeah,
16th. May 16th.
15th.
15.
15th.
But
And it's the,
where
and
it's
it's the
wrong,
2021.
yeah, the resolution
Whoopsie.
is 2020.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're in the first whereas clause, we're changing 16 to 15, and we're changing 2020 to 2021.
Yeah.
And I hope the fate of the parade has a different fate than the 2020. And in the title, we'll also change it to 2021.
Yeah.
Oops.
With that amendment, I would move the resolution.
Second.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, the next item on the agenda is to authorize an appraisal, the payment for an appraisal report on the Gannett property in connection with the PDR program.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, I had a couple thoughts I just wanted to share, Darren. I'm a little concerned about this. We just had a lengthy discussion about a property with significant environmental factors, and we went through a zoning process for that and have gone through it several different times, and that zoning process doesn't cost the town money to do. I'm not so sure that I'm a big fan of purchase of development rights as a general policy tool. I do think that there's ways that we can protect these properties without using significant sums of taxpayer money. But as much as I want to see open space preserved, in doing so in this manner, we're not preserving it for any public use. We're just really preserving it for the owner. So I will not be supporting this resolution tonight.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Any other discussion?
I actually have a couple of questions. Well, first of all, the money is money that we have in mitigation funds, right? And we would share that with supposedly Plan would be involved. Would Saratoga Plan be involved in this?
We're trying to get Plan
Process.
involved, and that's still out there, right, Mark?
Yeah.
Yes, it is, Darren. I spoke with Michael Horn yesterday. He's going to be attending a Zoom meeting with my committee later on this week.
So just a couple of other questions. I want to make sure that this whole process went according to the process that Oates has laid out. I know that you did ranking, and I still have that list here.
Mhm.
Obviously, this Brownell Road project is number 2 on your ranking list.
Actually, it's I'm sorry, it's actually number 1.
Oh, okay. Well, the one I have here, the number 1.
Silver
that's
Beach
scored the
Road,
highest.
Silver Beach Road pulled out of the program. He chose not to participate.
Okay, well, that was kind of my question was,
Yeah.
why that's not there.
That was in my year's end report to the supervisor that I put in that he had pulled out, Cynthia.
My other question is, I know that we had a formal request on the number 3 on your thing with Cornthwaite. Are we, we went some distance with him. Are we going to move forward with that one also? Because, I have no problem with the Brownell Road. It is an area that we have identified as wanting to keep it rural. It was identified as a rural neighborhood in our 2005 master plan. The new master plan will likely, be, identify it as someplace we want to move forward with. I just want to make sure that we're, going through the process the way we should be going through the process. So,
Well, if I understand you correctly, are we going by what we laid out through our Oats committee? Is that your question?
yes, I want to know if we're also going to proceed with Cornthwaite.
The answer to your question, yes, that is our goal. In my letter again to Supervisor O'Connor last year at some point, when we laid out our ranking system, what we had done to tweak and modify the ranking system, it was our desire to have more than one parcel appraised. We had hoped to get the top three. What came into question was the funding for such. It was believed that because there is owner contribution with most any PDR that you do, that they would split the cost of that appraisal. And again, as I said at I think his November meeting, when I addressed the board about the PDR program in general, I had also stated that both Mr. Gnip, Mr. O'Connor, the top two on the list, had expressed reluctance to put in any money up front. And I stated then, and I'll state again, that I don't blame them. Much with the Bowman PDR, which was initiated through plan, that money and those monies that were owner contribution were in fact received on the back side, not the front side. So we really, in essence, would not be doing anything different. So are we following what we laid out on the committee? Absolutely we are, both through ranking the parcels we've chosen. Gnip is number one now because, as I said, Mr. O'Connor, the Silver Beach parcel, phoned me well over a month ago and said that he didn't think the town would have enough money, so therefore he wanted to withdraw from the program. As I told him then, and I'll say again, I don't know why he thought we didn't have enough money, because a dollar amount was never mentioned to him. But that's his business, it's his property, and I've said that also from the start.
Yeah.
I would just add to that, Cynthia, if I could just get in here, that you never know what's going to happen. I mean, we don't have the appraisal report. We don't know if the Gnip property is going to consummate. And in which case, if it doesn't, yes, we'd certainly be looking at the other properties, including the Cornthwaite property. So.
Okay. I see the ranking, he's number 3, but we kind of started down that path before. And I just don't want to let that one fall through the cracks because we've got somebody else on the hook, so to speak.
Every single parcel that we have on there, and we ranked a good number, as I'm sure you've seen. If you're looking at the list that I provided, we care equally as about each and every one of those parcels. Some are what I call viable, some are not really going to be viable, because either developers have already approached those individuals and they can offer a lot more money than the town can, or there's other factors that our committee, that we have as a consensus, we've discussed and arrived at the decision we have in terms of ranking. I'm sorry.
As long as the decision was made by the committee, that's all I ask. I did talk to another committee member earlier, and she assured me that this property was selected for all sorts of reasons. So that's all. I just wanted to ask the questions.
Okay, thanks, Cynthia. And Craig.
I do. What was the estimated cost of that appraisal, Darren?
It could be anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 for an appraisal, generally, on average. That's if you take into consideration, Alyssa supplied, and thank you, Alyssa, for that, by the way. She has supplied us with previous assessments or appraisals, rather, that had been done in the past, one of which was Bowman's. And based upon those prices, generally you're looking somewhere in that neighborhood between $3,000 and $5,000.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And if I could just add one more thing at this time, I'm just curious. Tim mentioned a way possibly to obtain or preserve open space within a town without spending money. I'm just curious that if there's ideas out there, I would love to hear them. I'm sure other towns would like to hear them as well, because I'm not aware of any such program in place. So if I would love to hear anything that you had to say, Tim, to address that.
That's literally what land conservation zoning allows, is it restricts the use for.
I know what land conservation is.
So that's what I was talking about. We could zone this land conservation. We could put lot restrictions on it to prevent subdivision. There are other tools in our quiver from land use other than purchasing the development rights. That is
which would be harmful to the property owners. Why would you rezone, say, for this example, the Gannett property, land conservation?
Well, fundamentally, what started this discussion was we wanted to preserve open space.
Yes, that's correct. But if you're trying to compare that to 12 Hearn Road, I don't see where there's any comparison. They're two totally different parcels of land and totally different circumstances. I think it's apples and oranges. Okay. This is something where a property owner has agreed to enroll in this for the future of that property and has chosen to try to preserve it and work in partnership with the town, which is nothing new. It's just something we've talked about since 2001 and haven't really done much of anything about it since then.
Could I ask Jamie, what is this 1 acre zoning there now? It's either 1 or 2, I forget which.
It's 1 in this area.
Yep. And isn't the parcel over 100 acres?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
John,
Okay,
this list says 107, almost 108.
No, it's 140.
Oh.
Total.
I think there's 2 parcels that total 140.
Okay. Right.
Any other discussion? Okay, it's been moved, it's been seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carried by a 4-1 vote. Next item on the agenda is budget transfers.
Darren?
Yeah.
Weren't we going to act on the position at the highway?
Yes, I got that as J.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, since we added it on, I just put it on the end. Budget transfers. Kevin, I think we've talked about this in the last meeting, so I don't know. Do you have anything to add to it?
I do not have anything to add. I think they're self-explanatory.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. The next item is an add-on because I forgot to put it on the agenda until I was reminded. This is to add a position to Roger's staff because we do have need for welding skills given the nature of the equipment in there. This resolution would accomplish that at not a huge cost to the town.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, before we get to other comments, we have other business. Is there any other business that the board should deal with tonight? Okay, there being no other business, I'll open it up again for any comments by any town residents on any subject that you'd like to address to the board.
Kathy has her hand raised.
Kathy. You're muted, Kathy.
There we go. I was made aware today, and it happened to me personally. I was scammed. Department of Labor sent me a letter that someone had applied for workers' compensation or disability under my name and my social security number. And I've heard of 3 people now. So please be aware of what's going on with your personal information and just be careful out there.
Yep, I agree that there was a notice that came out from county staff today too, so.
Yeah, I also know somebody else that had that same scam, so.
Yep. Steve.
Yeah, hi, Darren, thanks. In light of the recognition of Captain Wallingford tonight and Renee's tremendous contribution for Malta veterans, I did want to, and I don't know the board may be aware of it, but they have another project going on, Malta Veterans, where they're rehabbing a home in Malta Gardens. And they're working every weekend, every Saturday to do a tremendous job down there in crazy weather conditions. Many people from the town have volunteered and continue to volunteer, but I just didn't know if the board or the town was really aware of, all the great things Renee's doing and particularly in this project. And, as a resident, I wanted to thank her and hope it continues, because their ultimate goal is to provide a home for a veteran in a refinished and rebuilt house in Malta Gardens. Secondly, on the concept of scams, I did want to point out, as a real estate attorney, I don't want to go on as to say as far as a scam, but mortgage tax has been a big part of the revenue for the county right now, and everybody hears about these LifeLock and title protection services. Well, there's a company out there that's sending everyone who buys a home or a notice that says you're required to get a copy of your deed for $90 or $100. And I just wanted to alert the residents and the board that that's not necessary. They get copies of their recorded document back, and they don't have to pay for that service. So I've gotten numerous calls as an attorney, and it's just something that everybody should be aware of. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve, for both those comments. And yeah, I mean, that deed thing is really aggravating to us. Not only will you get it in connection with the closing, but all deeds, especially in the past many years, are all free and they're online. So all you have to do is go online to Saratoga Records and look at it and print it.
Exactly.
Any other comments from town residents? There being none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thanks, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. We'll see you next